This is the No Excuses Coaching Podcast with Ryan Montes and Alana Banks, where we discuss the mindset, the attitude, and the strategies of elite coaching.
Okay, so welcome to the podcast. Today we're going to talk about, and this is important, listen carefully. Today we're going to talk about social media, and not just general social media. We're going to talk about why and how a lot of coaches, for lack of a better term, are effing up this very important part of their business and how to fix it in a hurry. Alana, how you doing?
Good. I love this topic. It's a good topic to talk about.
It is a good topic. Like before we hit record, we were talking about how coaching and social media are at the point now where they really go hand in hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like even as little as 3 years ago, you could be a coach and have no social media or have bad social media and be okay and be highly profitable and, thrive. And I don't think we're going to go as far as saying that's impossible now. Mm-hmm. But these days, your social media presence is more important than ever before.
Yeah.
I will say that.
Yeah.
It's more important than ever before.
Yeah, you definitely want to jump.
What comes to mind?
Yeah, well, what comes to mind is like, you've really got to jump on board if you're not. And what comes to mind is before I got into this type of work, I worked in public relations, in like marketing communications, in an agency for clients. And when I was working in that space, it was the time that social media was taking off. Like Facebook was taking off and LinkedIn was taking off. And so a lot of my job was convincing our clients to jump on the social media bandwagon. And they were like, oh, it's a phase, it's a trend, it's not a thing. We don't need to do that. But the ones that did in those early days, their social media presence really took off, and it was easy for them because it was new and exciting. And it's the same thing for coaches right now who are maybe not interested or like, oh, it's not for me. It's not something that I really want to do. You're really preventing yourself from having an awesome opportunity to tap into new networks and find new clients and show off your skills, show your personality, all that stuff. And so you don't want to be a dinosaur, right? You don't want to be a dinosaur like these old clients of mine that I was trying to convince to just get a Facebook page. Like jump on, because social media is here. It's here. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And if social media
is here. Social media is here.
It's here. And if you're not taking advantage of it, it's just such an untapped resource for you, right? That's also free. So why not give it a little bit of attention? Now, most of you listening probably are, right? So like, it's not like we're trying to convince you to start using social media, but maybe using it in a more productive way, I think, is what we want to talk about.
Yeah. So there's three things I want to say. The first thing is anything less than 100% is self-sabotage. So one thing that a lot of coaches are guilty of is, I have social media, but then their social media, it's like, just motivational quotes and generic graphics and like no personality, basically. And when I say personality, I mean human personality. So we're going to get into that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I want to talk about just briefly is something that happened in my personal life a couple of weeks ago. And that is, some people some of the humans that exist in my life that are not in my kind of coaching circle, that are, know me in other contexts. They know who I am and what I do as well. And sometimes they'll ask me questions. They'll ask for advice. And so I had this one friend of mine send me the website of a practitioner. And I think she's a quantum healing or quantum hypnosis practitioner, something like that. And he sent me her website and he was like, can you have a look at this person? I'm considering working with her. Let me know what you think. And so up until that point, I didn't realize that I had a specific strategy or protocol for evaluating what I think about a practitioner who I previously didn't know. But I glanced at the website. Website looked good. And then without even thinking about it, I knew that my next step was to look at this person's social media and see what they've got, just like see what's there.
Yeah.
Not expecting anything, but like, so I was like, yeah, let me shoot over to the website looks good. Couple of 2 or 3 kind of written testimonials here. Let me go over to the social media. And you know what I discovered was nothing. This person had zero Instagram presence, zero Facebook presence, not a shred of video content to be found. And so basically, that was where my evaluation had to stop. And I realized in that moment, and first of all, I had to go back to my friend and say, hey, the website looks good. And if I were to judge based on the website, I would say, sure, this person might be okay. But this very valuable piece of information and way to get to know a person without having to call them and talk to them, that is social media, was totally absent. And I realized that like I could have given him a much better, opinion if I could have gone to this person's Instagram or Facebook or TikTok and heard their voice and seen their face and seen them on video talking about their subject matter, demonstrating their expertise. Better yet, if I could have seen videos of their clients, their satisfied clients talking about their experience working with that person. But I didn't have that data, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're a coach, don't put yourself in that position where people are excited, go looking, to verify what you're about and finding nothing. So that's number 2 of 3. And then the last thing is, and then we can kind of deconstruct these if you want. The last thing is, if you think about old school, getting a job, right? When I was in the workforce, I'm not trying to brag, but of of every job interview I ever did, I think 99 out of 100, I got offered the job, right? I don't know if I did 100 interviews, maybe I did. But, 9 times out of 10, if I did job interviews, I would get offered the job. Why? It's not because I'm some kind of brilliant, ultra amazing worker person. It's because I understood that, the people who are hiring have limited time and limited information to make a decision on. They have basically your resume, your references, and what you're like during the interview. Mm-hmm. So if you have a good resume, decent references, and you present yourself well during the interview, there's a high probability you'll be offered a job. Well, flash forward to now being an entrepreneur, it's the same thing for potential clients, or in my case, students. People have limited time and energy to decide who to hire, who to work with. Well, we no longer have resumes, references, and an interview. Well, what do I have now as an entrepreneur? Instead of a resume, I have social media. Instead of references, I have testimonials. And instead of an interview, I have what? A sales call or a consultation, right? These elements are actually almost the same. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, think about it. If you're applying for a job, old school, and you go into the local business and you say, hey, are you guys hiring? And they say, sure, give us your resume. We're looking for somebody. And you say, oh, well, I don't have a resume. Resume culture is toxic, so I avoid the whole resume thing, right? A lot of people say social media is toxic, right? Are you going to get a job, right? If you just decide to skip that 1/3 of the process, probably not. Likewise, if you're looking to get, I'm putting it in quotes, hired by clients, don't skip the resume part. Don't skip the social media part. Yeah. And also don't half but it, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, Alana, I've been talking for far too long. Alana.
Yeah, I was like, is this the Ryan Montes podcast all of a sudden? Or
this is the Ryan Montes show. You know what it is? I was worried I would forget those things. I just wanted to get them on the record.
I get it. It's all good. Yeah, I mean, lots of good stuff in there, right?
Episode done.
Episode done.
Yeah.
One thing that I think of, like when you mentioned the word, you know, social media is toxic, or what did you say? Toxic social media?
Toxic resume culture. Yeah, but that actually is a common objection from
Yeah.
coaches is
Yes.
that, I don't do social media. I don't like social media. Social media is bad, this, that, which when I hear that, it's like hearing the phone book is toxic or,
Yeah.
a smartphone is toxic. It's not the media, the medium. It's what people do with it. It could be toxic or it can be very empowering, right?
Exactly. And so I think first off, if you have that belief, you need to shift that ASAP because you can make it what you want it to be, right? Like you're in complete control of your social media channel. So you can set up boundaries as to like how much you want to use it, how much you want to post, what you want to post about, but it's not toxic is my first thought.
I would agree.
And it really for me is an opportunity to showcase like who you are, right? Just as like a normal human being. And because you're selling yourself as a coach, your business is you are the thing that you're selling, then you want to get comfortable just sharing the stuff that you work on or coach about or talk to your clients about or you're really passionate about or your beliefs in like whatever it is your niche is, and just get it out there because then that's going to resonate with people. I think that there's this really big misconception around having to be perfect and having to, have these well-crafted videos or like super well-crafted captions, but it's not a TED Talk. And I think Ryan, you said something a long time ago when we first started podcasting, but you're like, a podcast isn't a TED Talk. And that takes so much pressure off because it's just like we're just rocking up here every week talking about stuff, sharing our opinion, sharing what we believe, sharing information that we've learned about coaching and mindset and all that stuff. And that's the same thing that you do using your social media. Like it doesn't have to be a TED Talk. It doesn't have to be this like well-researched essay or, speech on video. You're just dropping little gems. You're dropping little things that you're thinking about and just but also being intentional about it because you're not just going to like talk about whatever, because that's also a pitfall for some coaches is if you don't know exactly who your audience is and what your niche is, then you get into a little bit of trouble because you're just sort of randomly talking about a whole bunch of things. And we talked a lot about this in the defining your niche episode that you can go back and listen to. But that's just one thing I think that you have to just be careful of when you're using social media is just like really know what your message is, really know what your belief is in whatever it is you coach about, and just say all that stuff on repeat. And also remember too that people are on Instagram, for example, or TikTok or Facebook, and they're scrolling, like they're not paying a lot of attention. So, don't waste your time spending a ton of time crafting these messages because like, people are scrolling while they're waiting for the bus or, eating their lunch.
Waiting for the bus and eating their lunch? What?
You know what I
Is that
mean?
what you
Like
said?
people aren't like, it's not like I pick up my phone and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to like read an essay. You know what I mean? Like I'm mindlessly scrolling half the time. Half the time the sound is off or I'm in bed and like I'm half asleep, right? Like it's like no one is really paying that much attention to your content. So
Yeah.
if that's another concern you have, like, oh, I'm not good enough, or I can't be professional enough, or I don't really know what to say, like,
Yeah.
doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. And just know that your ideal clients are somewhere waiting for a bus at any given moment and or eating lunch. I don't know why that I found that so interesting. Anyways, I do want to hone in on what Alana you're saying. And because you're right. And a moment ago I mentioned, or a minute ago, or several minutes ago, I mentioned, anything less than 100% is self-sabotage.
Mhm.
And probably there's people who are going to hear that and totally misunderstand what I'm saying to assume I mean you must do 100% and have a perfect social media presence. Nay, nay, nay. That's not at all what I'm saying. But let's go back to the metaphor of the resume, right? Well, your resume should have like your name and contact information on it. Your resume should have your work history, your education. It should be free of spelling mistakes, right? If you've got that, you pretty much got 100% of a resume. That doesn't mean you spent 45 hours writing it and sent it to NASA for evaluation or anything like that to be crazy and be a perfectionist, right? But you've given 100%. Likewise, with social media, as long as you're not skipping huge fundamental components of social media, you can still be giving 100%. There's a big difference between being a radical perfectionist and just playing the game well. And and what I mean by that when it comes to social media is you should have your face in your social media, right? Mm-hmm. If you're a coach or a service provider that works face to face with clients, we should be able to see your face, hear your voice, and get a sense of your personality in your social media. Your name should appear in your social media. This is like, I don't have many pet peeves, but like people not including even their first name in their social media profile when they're clearly a solo entrepreneur is a problem. Mm-hmm. To put it mildly, it's a problem. Yeah. Right. And just the basic components, just the basic things. Right.
Yeah. And I think the other big piece too is actually, I want to say two things. One thing that I see a lot is potentially coaches that don't have a strategy or don't really know what their message is or don't really have an idea of like what they want to talk about, but they also use social media to project what's kind of going on in their life. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, it's almost like it's like a mix of like educational stuff about what they coach on, but then, some posts that are projecting whatever might be going on in their life at that moment. Yeah. And that's a tricky one. And I used to do that. And like, if you're doing that, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just like, it's something that I can pick up on now, maybe because I used to do it and now I don't. But just be careful of that because that's very confusing to your audience, especially if you're going down a specific niche. Like you have to decide, am I using this personally or am I using this to grow my business? And then if it's, to grow your business, then you kind of want to keep some of your personal projections out of it. That's just my opinion. And then the other thing that's very important is consistency. Because I think this happens too naturally. Like you kind of get on a roll where you're like posting content and you're like, yeah, this is good. And like you're feeling excited about it. And then you just stop for like a period of time, right? And then it's just like, oh, where did that person go? They were really, and you're like up and down. Like that inconsistency is, if you're using it for your business, if you're using it for coaching, can be, I think, a little bit damaging because you're just like, is this person really in it? Or like, are they just busy? Or like, what's going on? So that's just another thing too, to keep in mind. And it doesn't mean that you have to be posting like so much content, but even if you just put up a story, just as like, hey, I'm here, but like, maybe you're just too busy to be posting stuff and that's okay. But at least have the light on, right? Like, I feel like when you don't have a story, at least one, sometimes it's like, are you there or are you gone or what are you doing? What are your thoughts on that?
You said a lot of good stuff there. I want to agree with you about don't use social media as your personal soapbox for veiled attacks on people that have irritated you. Yeah. I saw this really good. And it's very obvious. It's very obvious when people do this. Yeah. I saw a post. I can't remember who posted this, but it was one of the coaches that I follow. And she posted like a little carousel of text. It was like, stop writing content direct it at the guy who dumped you 3 months ago and start writing content directed to your ideal clients, right? And then like the caption was like talking about what you're, and please, everybody, I did not write the content that I just described. I merely saw it on the internet. But in the caption, she was describing what you're talking about, where you have a social media following, and it's easy for like little bits of your personal life to like leak into your content. And I think that's actually okay if you're honest about it. But if it's like veiled, and I'm sure people who are listening to this know what we're talking about, like,
Yeah.
When it's this like almost like public service announcement, but it's really clear that it's just like, the person describing some problem they've had with a person in their life. Anyways, we don't need to dwell on that too much. Definitely direct your content towards your ideal clients in a way that is empowering for them. And then the other thing you said was consistency, and having an account that is lived in. You don't need to be constantly posting, constantly coming up with like high pressure, high value, content. But that's a great example you used, Elena, on Instagram is stories. And I always give this metaphor to my students. Your Instagram account is the house, okay? Cute little house. Yeah. And your stories are the smoke coming out of the chimney. Your stories are the smoke coming out of the chimney. So at a glance, if I look at a house and there's smoke coming out of the chimney, I know somebody's home. I know that this place is active and inhabited. But if I look at an Instagram account and there's no stories, and stories are the little things that expire every 24 hours, if there's no story, I have no way of knowing how long it's been since the owner of this account last touched in on the account, right? Whether they're still active. Because there's zillions of Instagram accounts that are dead, right? You don't want people to assume your account is dead if you're still offering services.
Well, one way I check in on that is if they don't have stories, then I'll just go to the most recent post and check and see when did they post that, because it shows the date, right? And so
August 2017. Right?
Yeah, or like, and sometimes you see that and you're just like, oh, this is a dud, and you're just like, I'm not interested, right? So like that goes back to your story about looking into the website or the social media stuff for your friend. It's like you can have an awesome website and look like you're super legit and like a very professional business. But if you don't have social media presence, then it's difficult to tell, like, is this business still in business? But if you have a social media presence that shows the people who are looking, who are searching, who are researching your business, like, oh, okay, this person is very active. They're very committed to this business, and they're showing up every day. So let me dig a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And on the flip side, like if I'm researching a company or a business or a coach or a consultant, and I go to their Instagram and I see that there's no stories and their most recent post was 3 months ago or longer, I'm just going to assume that they're not in business anymore, unless there's some other immediately apparent evidence. In that case, like it might even be better to not have the account than to have a dead account that is going to, sub-communicate to the world that you're not in business anymore.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
So what?
Cool.
How do we wrap this up? How do we tie a bow on this episode for our listeners?
Here's what you got to do, folks. Pick one or two. If you're not yet on the ball with social media, I know a lot of people listening to this probably are on the ball and they're rocking and rolling and they're confident, right? But if you're currently in the space where you're not in social media, or you've got 1 foot in and 1 foot out, or you still have that old limiting belief that social media is toxic, and it's not social media that's toxic, it's the way people choose to interact with others on social media that can be toxic. Okay, if you're in that camp at all, here's what you got to do. Heal whatever you need to heal that makes you think that the medium is toxic rather than, certain ways of using it, and pick one or two platforms and just go in there and do the work and be visible, be discoverable, and just be decent. Have a decent presence on there. The two go-to are Facebook and Instagram. It could even be just one. And don't leave dead accounts. Don't create dead accounts, right? Don't start a TikTok and have one post and then just leave it there dormant, right?
Yeah.
Or if you do, put in the bio hey, this account's not maintained. To find all the good stuff on Instagram, and then link to your Instagram, right?
Mm-hmm.
And last tip is just model other people who have a social media presence that you like. Do not copy them, but model them. Notice what they're doing, what kind of stuff they're doing, and do similar stuff. It's that easy to get going.
And go into it with the mindset of this is easy and this is fun and, it's not complicated. Because if you go into it with that mindset, then it's just it's going to come naturally. I know because I used to do social media coaching before I got into hypnosis. And one of the biggest things was it's so complicated. I need a strategy. I need all of this stuff. And I was just use your intuition. That was always my guidance, which maybe wasn't helpful, but that's how I've always approached social media. Or if I'm sitting down to write something and it's taking me way too long, then I just stop. I'm what am I doing? This isn't working. So then I pick it up later or something like that. If it's not coming to you, don't force it. It's not an emergency, right? You don't have to get up a post right now. Just take a break and something will come to you when you're not thinking about it. When you're washing the dishes or out for a walk, a post idea will come and then go with it.
Yeah.
That's my final.
Embrace. Yeah, Alana's correct. Embrace it. Embrace social media. It is here to stay. It is how people are making buying decisions in many, many, many cases. And if you are offering a product or service and you're not giving people the benefit of social media content for them to help make their buying decision, you won't even know it and you'll be turning people away.
Yeah.
So don't do that. Yeah.
And one other thing to say on that, one more thing is...
No, we're out of time. I have to DM you if they want to know the one more thing. Okay, go ahead.
You have to also think about how do you consume social media? Because sometimes you're wanting to create this content that you wouldn't even consume, right? So it's what type of content do you like to consume? And then just create that is another good tip. And how do you consume social media? And what types of posts do you like reading? Do you like watching video? Do you like reading? Do you like reading really long captions? Do you like the short ones? Do you like quotes? What's your style? Because then you can start there. If you're kind of oh, I don't know what I want to post. Well, just post stuff that you like.
Yeah.
That you would like to read. And then that's how you can kind of get into that mindset of this is easy and embrace it. So that's it. That's my final answer.
There you go. Cool. By the way, if you're into Instagram and you want to boost the power of your reels big time, I have a easy and impressive reels masterclass for coaches, hypnotists, and anyone who wants to come can come. I'm doing it for free. I announced it less than 24 hours ago, and already 23 people have signed up. By the time this episode goes, Alana's going to be there. By the time this episode goes live, I think people will still be able to get into it because it's at the end of next week.
Yeah.
So shoot me a DM on Instagram if you want to be there. It's free. Other than that, follow me on Instagram, Ryan Montes NLP. Lots of good stuff always coming down the pipe. That's what I got for now. Lana, what do you got going on?
Taking on one-on-one clients for my sexual freedom coaching program. You can follow me on Instagram to find out more about that at Alana Banks Coaching. And I just finished recording an audio training on awakening and embracing your pleasure through the 5 senses. So that's going to be available really soon. So if you're interested in that, you can get on the list so that you're first to know about it. Just send me a DM on Instagram at Alana Banks Coaching. And one more thing, don't forget about our merch store, No Excuses Outfitters on Etsy. The link is in our profile on Instagram. It's the No Excuses Coaching Podcast. Is that what it's called? No. It's the No Excuses Podcast on Instagram.
Or Ryan Montes NLP. It's there in the link in my bio. You can get to our merch store. Buy a mug, buy a t-shirt, but not a mouse pad.
Yeah, not a mouse pad. And also, because this is a new store, we've been kind of figuring out the pricing and stuff like that. And actually, all the prices have been lowered. So if you went to the store and you weren't into the prices, go back because you may be more into the prices now.
Boom. That's it. All right.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
See you later.
Speak to you next time.